What up? What is up, folks? Let me, I'm wearing my headphones today because maybe if I can figure out how to get it working, we will, watch something hilarious. This is going to be a short one today because I got to get ready to leave. Playing with some of my stuff here. Bear with me, folks. Computer stupidity. Oh, here's our boy. Maybe. I really don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. But whatever. Doesn't matter. So, letting me, or I wanted to thank you guys for letting me pull at a little thread that I've been working on here. Um, this kind of stuff just kind of burrows into the old brainstem and gets stuck. It's nice to say it out loud and not, rage in real life. The internet is good for some things. I thought today we might talk about the libs as we know them. You know, those folks that have the opposite brainworms of the ones with the problems. So we talked about right wing brainworms. I don't feel correct here without a drink. Uh, I'll rectify that in a moment. We talked about the right wing brainworms and how that makes people, completely insane because they have to retreat in the age of like everything being terrible. They have to retreat to like a quasi form of capital or of fascism that essentially has given up on the idea that it is possible for people to be collective and for people to use their um, use people in the same class to organize and find answers to the problems that we face, right? So if people were able to collectivize in the way that I would prefer, we would put together workers' movements and strikes, and you would have actual labor power in this country to do things like what the NBA did with the sitting out and just calling off basketball, basically. And so, in the absence of a belief that people can come together and work together and collectivize their energy and their ability as workers, you have to retreat to people are rugged individuals and they cannot and everybody's out for the self and the self is all that matters and I got to take care of me and I got to take care of mine and if you and that is the road to actual fascism because there is nowhere else to go when things get bad and when there's a crisis like the one that we are living through currently. When things get bad, you have to throw up your hands and say, well, um, I'm going to look out for me and mine. These are people fighting at Walmart for toilet paper when COVID-19 was first a thing. These are people that fight with each other on Black Friday and shit because their only way of self-expression is consumerism. And when that consumerism is put under attack, they have to retreat to rugged individuality, right? So we've talked about those folks, the brainworms, right wing folks that are on cruise control, set for their authoritarian dream, which is, school prayer and a rigid social construct that shuts down all the Planned Parenthoods and uh, you know increases police funding, basically wipes any all the Muslims off the face of the earth, and creates a white Christian, um, what do they call it? Judeo-Christian ethno-state between us, some of the Europeans that we claim to like, and Israel, right? Doing away with really anything else. And so this is the global hegemonic idea of what fascism could provide for people who are in a situation where they don't understand the world around them. So we've talked about those folks and spent a lot of time on those folks actually. Now today, I feel like the more we pull at this thread, and eventually I will get somewhere, the other side of that coin is the folks on the left that have the same sort of brainworms, but, and when I say left, I mean nominally, right? They consider themselves on the left because they have been raised with the ideology of collectivism. We're all kind of in this together, even in some sort of vague, even maybe religious sort of way. They were raised on this idea of, well, we have to all work together because we're all in this together and do unto others and all that kind of stuff. That the right wing folks have just scrubbed out of their brain because it doesn't play into their individualistic ideology that has, burrowed its way into the American psyche, um, deeply, very, very deeply, as capitalism has gotten more and more um, vicious and oppressive. People have not gotten the response that they think they should get from their politicians and from the government and the state. And in response to either the inaction or just the outright violence that the state has inflicted upon them, they have retreated into this insanity, right? And so the people on the right, obviously dangerous, right? Obviously dangerous, obviously headed to a specific spot. But the people on the left, air quotes, the people on the left that have these same sort of brainworms, they are, they have actually synthesized these two seemingly opposing worldviews. Number one being they have to, they are consumerist by nature and therefore have to uh, brand everything that they do, or yeah, they have to brand everything, or they have to create some sort of illusion of polish on top of everything that they do. That is why uh, defund the police even became a thing, is because a bunch of actual people and actual protesters and actual people doing the work went out and protested. But the people who were unwilling to do the work, or it just simply did not serve their financial or class interest to go out and get the shit kicked out of them by their local police department, those people thought that their best contribution to the movement would be, I'm going to make up a hashtag, right? And we know who these people are. They're mostly white, they're mostly suburban, they're mostly women, to be honest. And they figured out that, or they replaced the idea of actual collective action with I'm going to post, which, we have talked about this before, which is posting is not politics, and posting is just you making peace with the fact that you have no political power. And actually, the fact that you have no political power that you are willing to exert. Whereas real political power is uh, bullshit, grunt work, nonsense. You got to go talk to strangers and you've got to fucking go to meetings and you've got to get involved in organizations and you've got to work to organize people together. But people who have already benefited from our economic system and our society don't want to do that because it's grunt work. And our society has successfully um, chastise chastised people who do grunt work to the extent that nobody's willing to do it. So now we live in this situation where everyone who is not who is on the left but is not out in the street and is spending their time posting has this sense of like this is what I'm doing to change the world, right? With a responsibility with and they're able to decouple themselves from the actual responsibility of doing anything that puts their worldview or the way they or their paycheck or the way that they organize their lives in danger at all. And this leads us to the libs, right? The so-called Obama, Clinton, um, left of the country, right? And we talked about how we got to these people yesterday, but we didn't necessarily deride them in the way that they deserve. And so these people who are out of one side of their mouth decrying the idea that the American system is devolving into fascism in front of their eyes, right? They have no lack of posts about kids in cages or uh, Trump gassing protesters, or did you see that Trump, owns a hotel and the Saudis stay there, or whatever the hell, or Trump's gone golfing 300 times, or whatever the hell that they, you know, post about, where they are clearly pointing out that the system is not doing anything at all to benefit regular people. But then out of the other side of their mouth, they are unable to cope with the actual material changes that have to take place in order for the things that they say they care about to change. Excuse me. And the reason for that is the vast majority of these type of people went to college, have a professional job, work in a actual career field where they see a future for them that includes advancement and and eventual prosperity. These people are in incredibly um, vulnerable but also safe positions. Safe in the sense that they are making a regular paycheck, they are able to put food on the table in most cases, and they are um, providing for their family in a sustainable way. But risky and precarious because every bit of that depends on the opinion of their bosses or their uh, you know close connections within the industry that they work in or their colleagues, right? A lot of this depends on um, the opinions of other people, right? Because there are no protections for people uh, to have their own political views and take political action in their own personal time. There is no free speech protection for those people in the workplace because we have made this decision as a society that private corporations and private companies and businesses and shit like that are immune from constitutional protections and the actual democracy that we've built outside of them. That they can be run like a uh, feudal enterprise, basically, versus adhering to many of the social socially based laws that we've set up in this country. So here's a for instance, right? The platforming on social media of nut jobs across the spectrum, right, that are leading people down insane roads and educating them on conspiracy theories and nut job bullshit. Free speech allows for those people to do whatever they want in this country, as long as they're not hurting anybody, which the definition of that is pretty clear. I mean, pretty set in stone, right? I mean, we have this example of shouting fire in a crowded theater and all that kind of shit. And so they are out, these are your, these are your Alex Joneses of the world. These people who are out doing nonsense shit. Twitter deplatforms these people, right? Because they are doing bad things. Now, Twitter takes that stance out of public outcry and calls it democracy. But the problem is they don't give the same courtesy, or they don't do the same stuff and take the same action on people who are doing actual systemic damage to communication in this country. People like uh, the Turning Points USA folks. Your Steven Crowders and your Candace Owens and your these kind of people that are doing an actual disservice to the discourse. People look at Alex Jones, and the vast majority of people in the world know that that person is a crank, right? They see Alex Jones and they go, wait, hold on. He thinks they're putting chemicals in the water to make the frogs gay. This person is a crank. This person is going on his show and saying that Sandy Hook was a hoax and never happened. This person is a crank. Most, people over the age of 12 can listen to this guy in his current iteration and suss out what is bullshit and what isn't. And when they go through this and go through his content and figure out that 99.9% of the things that he's saying are complete nonsense, they just don't watch it. And what's left over is a sector of society, a very small piece of society, that religiously watches Alex Jones because he can do no wrong. Does this sound familiar? When you start, when you allow, when you allow people to, when you allow corporations to make those decisions willy-nilly, like a feudal enterprise, and just kind of like, well, we're going to axe that guy, but we'll keep this guy, and we set the terms. You are creating a recipe for disaster because there is no space to have these ideas in a public forum. Instead, these ideas start to be had among crazy people. And this is what gives you, um, and in the absence of actual class awareness and actual class consciousness, the people who are alienated by social media and their cult is banned from polite society will continue to collectivize in secret, or they will continue to collectivize in the darker parts of society, right? This is where you get the QAnons. So anyway, left wing brainworms. That little bit of a rant. I'm just trying to. I'm trying to. Like I said, the purpose of these streams. I guess I should lay this out. Is that I know that I've got a profound concept rattling around in my head somewhere that will sort of help to explain the end times and the weirdness that we're living in, but I can't yank it out. It has to come out a little bit at a time. So I'm trying to kind of work my way through it. So left wing brainworms. These people have bought into the idea, like we talked about yesterday, that everybody can win. That in the society that we're in right now, yes, we have people with, tens, if not hundreds of billions of dollars, while we have an enormous homeless population, right? And libs, centrists, I'll call them, because, I don't want to hate boomer them to death. Centrists look at that and say, well, we can solve homelessness but also have all these rich folks, and it just can't happen. You know, we talked about this the other day. Money is a zero-sum game. We can't just keep printing it to solve our problems, and we can't just keep allocating it to the top and expecting it to move back around. It just doesn't, because when rich people, there's something called the velocity of money. When rich people are handed $100, it goes into the bank. When poor people are handed $100, they spend 110. You know, like, and that is what keeps a consumer-based economy, which, in the absence of actual manufacturing in this country, to speak of, and in the absence of actual development of any sort of goods, a robust um, jobs program that is funded from the federal level to employ people and fix infrastructure. In the absence of these things, people will people do not have. I'm trying to think of it. In the absence of that ability, I keep losing my train of thought. Maybe it's a little early in the day for me to be doing this. In the absence of that um, ability, they turn to the idea of like, well, everything's basically fine. We just need to tweak, turn the knobs a little bit here and there, and we can get to the right frequency that helps the most people, ignoring the fact that the opposition party that they are dealing with does no such knob turning. In fact, when they are given the levers, the knobs, they hit that shit with a hammer over and over and over again. You know, people like to imagine, I've seen a lot of this going around, especially from these centrist people, that people like to imagine that we are living in 1930s Germany, right? Which is the lead up to Hitler, World War II, the Holocaust, the Third Reich, all that, right? And everybody just rolls their eyes at that because, or most sane people just roll their eyes at that because the Hitler thing is the easiest comparison to make, and the easiest uh, way to just like dismiss a movement. Oh, that's just like Hitler. And you dismiss it and you pretend like it's not real because it's Hitlerian, I guess is the word. When the reality is we're not living in a world like well, we are living in a world like in 1930s Germany, but not in the way that these people think. Not in the way that Trump is some sort of mastermind that's penning Mein Kampf on his fucking nightstand and uh, uh, coming up with a final solution that is going to do some sort. He has no. He's a dog chasing cars, right? The guy is not. He doesn't have some grand scheme. But what people forget about 1930s Germany is that the Nazis didn't come to power through some sort of magical means. They didn't just go like, "Hey, these are our ideas. We want to exterminate these folks," and people went, "Oh yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, here's the power." No, the right wing in Germany, beforehand, Germany was a robust democracy, right? I mean, they had like 40 something daily newspapers that circulated in Berlin. And otherwise, these people were incredibly educated. Their economy was incredibly robust, and they were living in one of the most democratic societies ever seen on the face of the earth for 20 or 30 years at this point. And the and everybody alive at that time in Germany remembered the great German Empire. And if they didn't, their grandparents did, or their parents did. It's very much like our grandparents currently living through the end times right now, for lack of a better term, but remembering the shining city on the hill, the American dream, America, and saying that's what America is because that's what it was when I was young, and then my brain is frozen in time. And Germany had the same sort of concept surrounding Frederick and the old German Empire, right? They had this idea of like, German being the great fatherland, Germany being, this great power and this great seat of regal democracy and regal uppityness, or whatever the word is that you want to use. My vocabulary is fucked. today. But uh, and what happened was slowly but surely these Nazi people and these National Socialists and these hard right nut jobs started to work their way into the right wing, the regular conservative wing of the German government. And over time, it took a couple of decades, but over time, their numbers increased until finally there were so many of them, and so many of them had a public voice, and so many of them were in positions of power with their hands on the knobs that when Hitler came along and through all of his nefariousness rose to power, it wasn't out of like everybody just oops. No, it was because the right wing viewed that, the Conservative Party viewed that in Germany as, oh, well, this guy is winning. And this guy and all the people that believe what he believes, they're winning. And we want to maintain our position of winning and being in power. And so I guess if this is what the people want. And of course, we know how that ended, right? We know where that went. And in the face of a party that operates in the exact same way, the big D Democrats in this country, the big organization, the centrists, the libs, they think that just moderately turning the knobs a little bit at a time, when they happen to have enough power to do so, which is not very often over the last century, if you really think about it, they think that the counterbalance to insane right wingism, insane right wing nonsense, and fascism, frankly, that the counterbalance to that will be, well, if we can just put the right people and the smart people in the right places to turn the right knobs and pull the right levers a little bit and move stuff just slightly to the left, then, and I don't mean left politically, I just mean move stuff slightly, then we can stave off this siege tactics, blitzkrieg warfare political party. And it doesn't work that way. And you saw how hard this ate absolute shit with Obama. Because Obama had the idea that he could meet these people somewhere in the middle. That, they were out there calling him a socialist and a communist and a non American and a crazy person and a terrorist and a Kenyan Muslim, whatever, right? That was infiltrating our country and changing America as the way we know it, right? And his counter argument to that, you can, look at town halls that he did at the time, was, well, these people don't know what they're talking about. These people, they got to look at the facts when the facts are irrelevant. And so he tried to play ball on the field of, well, I'm going to beat them with a good argument. He tried to play ball with them on like it was an episode of The West Wing. Like I'm going to make a really good argument and I'm going to have some really nice charts and I'm going to just override them with facts. When the other guys don't care. They don't care. The right wing makes a calculation when they decide to do something. And it is, will it win me more votes? Or will it suppress votes that I don't want to come out and vote against my opponent? That's it. That is it. That is the only calculation that the right wing makes in this country. Is, will it help me get closer to the levers of power so that I can smash them with a hammer? And if it does, I will do it. If it doesn't, then I will say the Democrats did it. That is it. That is all that they do. And so Obama's strategy of, we're going to meet these people in the middle. We're going to do things like Obamacare, even though he had run on essentially Medicare for all. We're going to do things like Obamacare, and we're going to build a bunch of bridges. His idea of every sort of policy that he ever came up with was that, well, yeah, we'd like to get here, but we've got to build the bridge to get there. And so I'm going to be the bridge builder. And then the next guy can come along and complete the bridge, and we'll be where you want to be, American people, right? And what he didn't think about was the fact that, yeah, sure, he could stand there and build that bridge all day long, but the Republicans were standing on the other side with a blowtorch, literally ready to just burn the son of a bitch to the ground as soon as it got to them, because that's what they do. And this these this led to the birth of the brainworms that have burrowed into these people, that have convinced them that if we can just move things a little bit here and there, then eventually people will see, people will understand that Republicans are insane and that they are fascists, and they will pull back and stop supporting them, and we will welcome them with open arms to capital D democratic rule. And because we're the smartest, and because we're the most educated, and because we're the most connected to the people, and because we're the most diverse, we will be able to run an egalitarian society that benefits everybody. This is their idea, right? And it will never work because there is no virtue that is given to you based on your education or your diversity. There is only virtue given to you in politics by listening to what people want and doing it. And that means doing it at personal expense. That means doing it at a political cost. That means doing it when it's inconvenient. And Barack Obama made the calculation that you could have both, that you could have your cake and eat it too, right? And that calculation was wrong, and that in and of itself wouldn't be a problem, except uh, the second tier of big D democratism is democratic behavior is building a brand. And so they built this big giant brand around the Democrats. And who is at the head of that brand? Barack Obama. And so his elevation of these ideas has become the theory of governance for Democrats for a decade, more than a decade now. And you could argue that that theory goes back to the Clintons, but the Clintons were far more transactional and transparent about their transactionality in politics. Whereas Obama was more, look, folks, we gotta reach out to other people. Like he was more about speaking the language of collectivism and speaking the language of actual real social liberalism, and using that to try and shame Republicans into coming along with him. Hey, listen, all the people want this. I don't understand, Paul Ryan. Paul Ryan, why don't you want to go against everything that you've ever stood for politically and everything that's ever worked for you, and the reason that you are the in the position of power that you're in? Why don't you want to do that? Why don't you want to give up a win to me? I don't understand. And in the absence of these people wanting to give Obama a win, he just went around and said, well, they're obstructionists. They're obstructionists. They're obstructionists. They're obstructionists. They're obstructionists. And so I can't get anything done. And this became the brainworm that you hear all the time, which is, well, poor Obama, right? I mean, poor Obama, he just didn't have a chance. He just never had a chance. He he couldn't have possibly gotten anything done. They blocked his Supreme Court nomination. They uh, which his Supreme Court nomination, as a small aside, his Supreme Court nomination was starting at a compromise. Merrick Garland was starting at a compromise. He was saying, well, they're going to be tough on me in the Supreme Court, the what do you call it, the nomination process or whatever, and or the confirmation process in the Senate. They're going to be tough on me because I'm dealing with a Republican Senate. So what I'll do is I'll pick a guy that's right of center, so that when they are difficult about it, I can go to the American people and say, look, they're being difficult. I was perfectly reasonable, and look, they're being difficult. But it turns out that people don't care, and the people that you're trying to get don't care because the people that you're trying to get have already bought the Kool-Aid. They've already drank the Kool-Aid and bought the dream. They've already realized, no, no, I believe X, which is all these conservative ideas. They're anti-abortion, they're pro-gun, they're you know whatever that bubble of ideas that they live in, and people need to wrap their head around the fact that most people don't have a congruent or at all um, uh, sensical political views that align with each other. They all have weird, crazy, controversial, they don't make any sense together views, but on the whole, they agree with conservatives, and their parents were conservatives or their grandparents were conservatives or whatever the fuck, and so they have identified and bought into the cult of personality of conservatism, and part and parcel of that is Obama's a Kenyan Muslim terrorist socialist, and so I cannot possibly change my mind and vote against what everybody's been telling me is the right thing to do. Not to mention, Republicans hugged the flag decades ago and became the party of America and made everybody feel like if they were voting against them, they were really voting against the real America, right? And that is where, if you read Thomas Frank, he talks about this a lot. That is where the left missed the boat because they had the opportunity in the 21st century, in mid 21st century, to swing the middle of America and the rural population in this country to the left. They had the opportunity to do it through agricultural reform and collectivizing the farmers and um, robust infrastructure spending in these um, less dense population areas in the middle of the country, the flyover states, if you will, right? And they failed. They failed because of the same signaling bullshit, which is like, look, aren't these Republicans crazy? Come on, you guys aren't crazy. You guys aren't crazy. But the Republicans are crazy. Why are you listening to the Republicans? You guys aren't crazy. But doing nothing else. Not providing any sort of material benefit to these people, not explaining to the people in the middle of the country why collective action and why sticking together and why uh, having a sense of workers versus capital, why that is important in order to maintain the protections that these people have, the uh, the ability for these people to sell their goods without competition from poorer and more desperate people in other places that are more savagely uh, taken advantage of by capitalist structures. So they lost. They lost that battle because they failed to make that argument. And that is what led to the idea of, well, we have to start taking corporate money because we don't have the numbers. Because they got the class of people that vote. They realized these are the people that vote, and we have to get those people because they vote consistently. They show up and they vote. Uh, they view it as their personal responsibility and their responsibility to upholding democracy to vote. And so the right wing captured those people of their own free will, of course, but because they made a compelling argument. Whether it was right or wrong or indifferent, they made a compelling argument to these people. And the left abandoned them and retreated to the major urban areas and the cities where people are more hyperly exploited by capitalism and therefore don't have the time to go and vote in such big numbers. They can't take the day off from plowing the field so that they can drive into town and fucking go to vote. They have to uh, work 60 hours a week and pick up the kid from daycare and their husband has to work and get two kids through school and worry about medical bills and worry about how we're going to pay the rent. They have far, 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 far more socioeconomic conditions that keep them from voting. And so the left abandoned these people. And in the absence of those people being part of the left decided that it would make the Democrats decided that it would make sense to start taking corporate money and filling the war chest so that they could beat Republicans on their own terms. And like I said yesterday, when the American people are given a choice between a Republican and a Republican, they will vote for the actual Republican every time. And what I mean by that is If they are given the choice between a corporate-backed, uh, capital-funded, capital class funded Democrat and a similarly funded Republican, they will vote for the Republican because it makes them feel more patriotic and it makes them feel more American, or they give them the secret warm and fuzzies that hating immigrants, or thinking that immigrants are taking their jobs, or whatever the hell, that Democrats don't give them. And plus, Democrats do all sorts of things for that are means tested and that are drilled down to these small populations of people. Whereas when Republicans do shit, they do it universally. Now they do it universally for the capital class and for the rich people who vote for them. But so what? They do it universally. Whereas Democrats do shit like affirmative action, which is incredibly alienating to regular people. It's probably the right thing to do, but it's incredibly alienating to regular people in the absence of having some sort of universality in the education system for just regular poor people that aren't minorities. And so when you alienate and ostracize people like that, you create a system where they will go to the people who are being more universal, even if it's not for them. But it's who they think they're going to be, because everybody in America thinks that they're going to be uh, a wealthy business owner with $1 million in the bank at some point. And so it is easier. It is easier for these people to identify with who they want to be and who that they think they will be when they fulfill the American dream and work hard their entire lives. It is easier for those people to cope with the idea that maybe that won't happen by pretending that it will than to be completely abandoned by a political party and watch that political party hand out means tested shits to people who don't work as hard or are black or are gay or fit some sort of minority checklist that they turn into their college shit. This is why Elizabeth Warren is so universally villainized, right? Is because she checks her box. She checked a few boxes and got a benefit that regular white people wouldn't have gotten, and so people on the right are like, well, that's fucking bullshit, which it is, but the difference is those people are animated by that. Whereas the left just goes like, oh, well, she's on our team, so I guess I got to make up some sort of bullshit excuse as to why she's like 0.00003% American or a Native American. Or I got to talk about how it's really Trump's fault because he was being a bully. And so all of this coalesced into the idea that we could have a win-win. And Barack Obama is the father of this idea that we can have a win-win, that everybody can be fine. We can keep taxes low on the rich, and in homelessness, we can keep taxes low on the rich and provide health care to everybody. We can keep taxes low and make sure that people who are food insecure can eat. And it's a zero-sum game. You can't do that. There's only so much resources. There's only so much money, especially when you are looking at America sliding down the conveyor belt of not being the world's superpower anymore. And so you end up in a position where people are incredibly alienated, and so they uh, diverge from politics and don't participate anymore because they are incredibly alienated and they feel like no one is listening to them because no one is. And when you when and Obama, like I said, Obama mastered this, and so he has buried this idea into the people who love him, into the people who follow him and think that he was the greatest president of all time. I mean, you know these people; they're all around you because Obama still has an enormous favorable rating among Democrats. Enormous. If he was able to run for president today, he would win. People love Obama, right? And people love Obama because he represents a it allows Americans to feel good. Obama allows Americans to feel good about politics, that he's doing the best that he can. But look how good we are because we elected a black guy. and we overcame that racial mountain that we had to climb. And also, he makes me feel nice about the things that I want. I want these things. He makes me feel nice about it. And then, like a 4 year old, he comes to me, like I'm a 4 year old, he comes to me and says, here's why you can't have what you want, buddy. But here's the compromise. All right. I talked to your mother, and we can't have chocolate ice cream for dinner. But here's the compromise. If you eat all your Brussels sprouts, then maybe we can have, uh, like, some dark chocolate chips, which nobody fucking likes. And so this this idea that this idea that Obama really carried into uh, the mainstream consciousness of Americans is rotting the center of our politics. It is rotting the center of our politics, and it has completely rotted the idea of a center. You know, you, there was a time where the apolitical people in this country were mostly in the center because they were fairly well informed, because our news was pretty much doing its job. This was decades ago, but our news was pretty much doing its job, and they were fairly well informed, and they were the center, right? Now, granted, we were living in a time then of insane patriarchy and racism, and not everybody was equal, but the people who were politically active and the people who were able to vote in the center ideologically were fairly reasonable. But and then there were, nut jobs on the right, mostly Klan members at that time, and nut jobs on the left, mostly like actual anarcho-communists at the time, uh, who were out there also. But the big tent of centrism was actually a thing. You had unions, but you also had stuff like the NRA, you know, that fell within this reasonable window of politics. Now, granted, insane views within the reasonable window, but a reasonable window of political discourse where people could have conversations, where James Brown could sit down with William F. Buckley and they could actually talk about issues that are going on, rather than William F. Buckley calling James Brown the N word, and, uh, or like saying that he's an idiot because the black family has fallen apart, or uh, James Brown's sitting there and saying that William F. Buckley is literally in the Klan. They didn't have to retreat to such vapid and ridiculous uh, identity woke scolding, because they because the area of discourse was pretty fucking wide. And so those conversations were able to be had. And now they cannot, because Obama uh, and the Clintons hollowed out the center. There is nothing there. There is no center, because they taught people that the center is just making deals. It's just, well, you know, these nut jobs out here and these nut jobs out here have particular wants, and we got to find something right here. But we're going to start right here with our negotiations. We're not going to uh, start with what we, with a little more than what we want and make them talk us down. Or we're not going to start with what the American people, when polled, say they want and then make them negotiate us down. No, no. We're going to start at the negotiated down position and then lose even more. And that's what gave you Obamacare. We started sort of in the campaign with universal health care, but that went away. And the plan that they came up with was Romney Care, which was a Republican health insurance giveaway anyway. That failed anyway. That Obama even said during the campaign was a terrible system to begin with. He was like, yeah, there were at least one debate where Obama said that Romney Care was stupid and failed miserably in Massachusetts and was immiserating people. And his answer to that was, I'm going to win by a historic margin. I'm going to have a filibuster proof majority in the Senate, so I can do whatever the hell I want. I can pass a law that says if you're a Republican, you have to get naked, paint yourself red, and run down your street 3 times a day. And it would have passed. because he had a filibuster-proof majority in the Senate. He had a House majority. He had a relatively balanced Supreme Court. You know, sure, this was pretty much the same Supreme Court that had made the Bush Gore decision, and almost all the same justices that had decided Citizens United was a good idea. But they were malleable to the political winds of the time, and you're seeing that again now. That the Supreme Court is understanding that, dude, if we don't start being more reasonable, they will pack the court. People will pack the court, and court reform will be on the docket for the next president. If we do not be more reasonable, that is why you're seeing them uphold DACA. That's why you're seeing them uphold the trans protections that they upheld, is because they're realizing that if they appear to the American people as a partisan institution, then there will be court reform, and they don't want that because nobody wants their power diminished. No individual wants their power diminished. It's, it's a perfectly natural response. And so we became this culture of negotiating from an already negotiated position of negotiating with ourselves. Obama never once went on TV and scolded the Republicans because they were denying people health care, because they were killing people. He never went on and said, 60,000 people every year die just simply because they cannot afford health care in this country. And Republicans want to continue that system. He just went, dude, I've done the reasonable thing here. I'm being reasonable. I'm being, I've given them most of what they want. Why won't they, I've gone 90. Why won't they just come 10? And it didn't work. It doesn't work. And it will never work because these people are only interested in what benefits them materially and what benefits them keeping their power. And so, who cares? When you have a majority like that, fuck them. Why are you debating with these people? You have you have the overwhelming will of the American people at your back to do these things and to change society for the better for regular people. And you're negotiating with cretins like this? And it became the ethos of the Democratic Party that what we are going to do is we are going to negotiate it to death. We are going to talk these people to death and talk these people to death and talk these people to death. And we're going to hit them with facts and charts and special ads and irony scolding and hypocritical scolding and all that kind of stuff. And we're going to get our army of people to do some really like wonky memes, and we're going to get buried deep into the policy, and we're going to educate the American people about, how many cents on every dollar they're paying in taxes. And we're going to get people these very granular details that do not fucking matter in the grand scheme of winning the war of ideas, right? And it failed. It failed. And these people are running, and the reason that these people are able to do this and don't feel bad about it is what I like to call Hillary Clinton syndrome. If you listen to Hillary Clinton talk about anything that she has done in her career, she will never ever tell you that she has done anything wrong. Ever. Ever. And anyone watching this is more than welcome to find a clip of Hillary Clinton admitting that she actually did something wrong in a material way and send it to me, and I will retract. But I've never seen it. She does not admit wrongdoing. And the reason for that is she has the mentality that because she is the smartest, because she is the most boss lady, because she is the most well meaning, because she is the most virtuous, if she is doing something, it has to be all those things. If she has an idea, it has to be all those things. If she acts on an idea, it has to be all those things. And these brainwormed people on the left have the same disease, which is, well, I'm virtuous. I went to college with people who don't look like me, and I learned a little cultural experience, and I understand how the world works from a from a cultural standpoint. I understand sort of what it's like to be a minority, and I'm virtuous and I'm good and I have everybody's best interests at heart, and I want to save the planet, and therefore everything that I do is all of those things. It's virtuous. It's trying to save the planet. It is cosmic good because they have this theory that like those people are evil. Those right wingers, they are evil, and they want to literally kill people. And they have it in their mind that we should just eradicate the poor, and all true. And they have it in their mind that we should just sell out to corporations, blah 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 blah, and they're bad people. And I don't even know if they look at it through that small of a lens or that wide of a lens. I mean, whew, excuse me, but they have it in their mind that that is the end all be all of the Republican Party. And because they are the opposite, because there's only two options, and therefore they have to be the other end, because where else would it be found? They have it in their mind that therefore they are the most virtuous, and they are the opposite of those things, and they have all of the good qualities, and they're looking out for people, and they're the best. And they're the best option for the American people. And if only, you'll hear Democrats say this all the time. It's not that their policies are bad, it's that they did a bad job of getting the message out. You'll hear them say that all the time. That was the entire narrative around Hillary when she lost, because she didn't go to fucking Michigan. Was, well, we had all the right ideas, but we just couldn't get the message out. And so the Democrats have made these centrists have made the decision that instead of sticking to a core principle and having actual policies and actual plans for uh, big structural change, as Elizabeth Warren likes to say. Instead of doing that, they are taking the easy road and cheating on the test by just saying, well, those people are already politically activated on the right. The voters on the right are already politically activated. They already have half of the wonk brain that we need them to have in order to understand all of our political wonkery and our smart talk. And so, what we can do is, yeah, we might lose one left voter. Tell me if this sounds familiar. We might lose one left voter who hates our policies and thinks that we're sellouts and bad, but we will gain two or three suburban uh, voters that are already activated for the right, but we can just educate them and get the message out, and they will magically change their mind and come over to our side and vote for us. Now, they may be true in the context of coronavirus, because that is a never before seen catastrophe that we are having to deal with as a country, and the current administration has clearly dropped the ball and laid a big fat turd in the response to that. And so it is possible, and this is what's dangerous, it is possible that that theory of change will work this time, and it will solidify it into concrete for Democrats to do from now on. And we talked about how dangerous this is yesterday, because it will lead to actual fascism. It will lead to actual effective autocracy that is not stupid like Trump is, and ineffectual like Trump is. That it will lead to a Tom Cotton or a Dan Crenshaw or somebody who actually understands how to wield that sort of political power, and who actually understands how to institute fascism in a real in an actual precise and long-lasting way. And the neoliberal centrist class, the which is now informed almost entirely by the ideology of Obama, those people are just rearranging the deck. They're not bringing anybody new into the tent. They are just trying to rearrange the deck. They are just trying to, well, we've already got this 20% of the American population, or 25% of the American population, that is going to ride or die for us regardless. They're the ride or dies. They're they're the homegirl on the side seat, right? They're always going to be there, Yas Queening Hillary, and you go Barack, and Yas Queen Michelle. They're going to always be there. Those 25, maybe 30% of the country. The other 25, 30% of the country is always going to yes, Queen Melania, and they're always going to go Trump, go, and MAGA, MAGA, MAGA. And what they're thinking is we'll just peel off 5% of those people or 10% of those people and bring them over here. And those people are already gone. They're already gone. They have made their choice. They have made their decision. You are not going to get them. Why not? Now, again, in the context of coronavirus, that may work. It might work because we are dealing with a cataclysm that hasn't been seen before. So it might work. It'll be close, but it might work. In the context of a normal election, absent coronavirus, which is what we will be dealing with hopefully next time around, when Joe Biden is too frail and brain dead to be able to run again, and so we are by default probably going to be running Kamala Harris, because who the fuck is going to primary a Democrat? It would be seen as rude and against the norms. And there will be some bigger boogeyman by then. There will be Trump 2, whoever it is, by then, which they will go, really? You're going to primary Kamala Harris and allow this crazy Hitler man that is now the big giant enemy? You're going to allow him to win? You spoiler? You're sowing division. You must be working for the Russians. And that is the road that we are on. That is the road that we are on, and there is no way to stop it. That is the takeaway here. Is there is no way to stop that. Other than maybe you get Joe Biden, maybe you flip the Senate, and maybe you're able to put an enormous amount of pressure on the Democratic Party in the first 3 years of Joe Biden's presidency, because there will be pressure on him to build momentum in order to win re-election for the Democrats. Not himself, but for Democrats. And so there will be pressure on him to listen to people. But the only way to do that is to collectivize people on a class basis and push Biden and his administration to hire the right people, which they sort of already are. In a way, there are a bunch of not the right people in there, but there are some of the right people in there, to listen to the right people and to write the right policies. But the reality is that if we do not do that, then we will get a worse Trump. We will accelerate the eventuality of American fascism, which will accelerate the eventuality of climate change and the eventuality of China, if this is something that you care about, becoming the #1 superpower in the world, and therefore making the fiat currency of the American dollar diminished over the next half a century. And that will lead to a lack of ability to provide for Americans. Because right now, because we are the fiat currency of the world and we have a economic superpower, we are an economic hyperpower, because we are able to do that, we can spend money internally fairly liberally if we so choose, which we are with the military. We're just not choosing to spend it on regular people. We're choosing to spend it on the military apparatus. And if we are not the world's fiat currency, and if we are not able to be a economic hyperpower, we will not be able to print that money that way. We will not be able to. We will no longer have that power to print money and provide for regular people. And it will lead to our doom. It will lead to our doom. And the immiseration of even more Americans. And so all that to say that the brain rot that has destroyed the center that these people fetishize of our politics is to be laid solely at the feet of the big D Democrats in this country. And by big D Democrats, I mean the actual elected people and the people who put on their cape every day and post for them. Those folks. It is to be laid directly at their feet, because we always knew who the Republicans were. We always knew who the right wing was and what they stood for and what their big dream fetish fantasy was for America, which is just insane, autocratic, capital rule to a fascist end. and the immiseration of anyone who is not white and male, or at least married to a white male. And, well, scratch that. Capable of producing a white male, not married to a white male, because, of course, gay people, no, fuck them, from a right wing perspective. And so we knew who they were the whole time. The Democrats declared themselves as better, as more virtuous, as a better option, as a more egalitarian and equitable option. And guess what, folks? It's bullshit. They just decided we'll take the easier road and we'll follow along besides them and we'll try to scrape off a few of their voters, and that's how we'll win elections. And it does not work that way. So I think I pulled a little more of the thread today. We're getting there. We're really getting there. I think I'm onto something. We'll see. But anyway, I gotta go. So we'll do this again tomorrow. Peace.